I will call the September 26, 2022 council meeting to order. Jenny, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Aludo?
Here.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Here.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Here.
Mayor Fox?
Here.
Mr. Keeler?
Here.
Ms. Cram?
Here.
Mr. Reiner?
Here.
I'm inviting Councilmember DeRosa to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this evening we are going to begin with a special presentation from our former Vice Mayor, Rick Gerber, and we invite him to come forward to talk to us about Founders Day. Welcome.
You know, I should have remembered that for all these years. Good evening, everybody. My name is Rick Gerber. Address is 109 South High Street, Dublin, Ohio. I'm the president of the Historic District Business Association. I'm here tonight just for some brief remarks to invite the whole community and also all of you to our first Founders Day, which will be this Sunday, October 2nd, from 12 noon to 6 p.m. Founders Day, the concept is basically taking our city motto where yesterday meets tomorrow. And each year what we want to do is kind of highlight a segment of our history. And this year we've decided to celebrate our 35th year as being a city. It's going to be kind of a 1980s theme. We'll start off the event with inviting all former council members and all of you. We'd like to do a photo op and then have a few of you speak. Then from there, we'll go through exhibits and a moonwalk competition. We'll have a couple of DeLoreans there, Back to the Future. We'll have a big grass twister game going on. We'll have some the clarinet band will be there as well. And then it will be very family oriented at the beginning of the day, and then it will go toward more adult toward the evening with highlighted by the Reaganomics starting at 4 o'clock. So there's plenty of parking over at the public garage, also up there, the lots behind the schools as well. So we invite all of you and we hope for good weather. And there's so many people to thank. It's been a collaborative effort between our group, Scott Dring over at the Dublin Visitors and Fishing Bureau, Allison with the city. It's just everybody's been very cooperative. We're very excited. We just didn't realize how many permits there are to go through this process. But anyway, I think it'll be a lot of fun. Next year we'll come up with a different theme. We kind of collaborate with the Historic Society, trying to highlight some important things that have happened in the community in the past. And our citizens, since they're so much involved with our community anyway, we think it's always nice to embrace what we've done in the past and kind of try that into the future. So I want to thank you again for your time. I know you have a busy evening, but again, hope you can all make it this Sunday. Thanks much.
Thanks so much, Rick. We're going to celebrate 35 years of the city, right? And all those people that helped build it. Thank you so much for all your efforts with that. We appreciate it. Next on our agenda this evening is citizen comments, and this is an opportunity for citizens to comment on any topic that is not on tonight's agenda. I know we have some people signed in. Is there, Lindsay, will you tell us who wishes to comment this evening?
We have Lisa Bateson.
Lisa, if you'll come forward. Is this an online comment?
No, this is someone who signed in.
All right. If you'll just come forward and state your name and address, we'd appreciate that.
I'm here to testify on the line item River Forest. This is the appropriate place to do that?
If you'll just state your name and address,
Lisa
we'd
Bates,
appreciate that. Thank you.
Go on Indian Hill Road, Dublin, Ohio. And I'm here to speak on the delay of the River Forest waters and resurfacing project. Okay, I hate this. I hate public speaking, but I felt so strongly I wanted to come up here. You should have received a letter from me in the email with some pictures. If you didn't, I have copies. But what I wanted to say is that I was here during the work group and wanted to say I agreed with a lot of the comments that you were making and sort of wanted to respond to those about how we feel about our project. Somebody said during the meeting, don't put it on the shelf and just let it gather dust. I think that's how we feel as a community because this has been since 2016 and Claire Wolf, another resident, will go into previous history, but we've been working on this since 2016 and we were pretty much I don't want to say guaranteed, but told it was going to be done in 2021. And then they decided to merge it together with the water project. And so we were told 2023. Now we're being told it'd be 2025. And from our perspective, it doesn't make sense because each time you delay it, it gets more expensive for our neighborhood and for you. I heard this the phrase impact on residents being used. And that to me is exactly what this whole issue is about for us. We have people that walk in our neighborhood from other neighborhoods, and we have crumbling we don't have sidewalks, but the edge of the streets are crumbling. We have kids on bikes, we have disabled people, and it just feels that we're sort of just being put aside and not given the attention that we need. I like the comment to somebody said, where are leaky buckets? And they're in River Forest. We have terrible stormwater drainage issues that we'd hope to get addressed. And I wondered if anybody had had the chance to see any of our roads and compared them to the roads in the Amberley and Muirfield and our different neighborhoods that surround us who actually come and walk in our neighborhood. And I think you have to agree that they're not nearly the same. We need the help more than anybody else does in that area. And then finally, you don't know what you don't know. Our project has been done. The project's done. The budget is known. You know exactly what our project entails. We've had several conversations with staff, and they've gone over the project with us at a couple of our different civic association meetings. So I guess at the end of the day, my question is, why is it that our project is being put off when it's pretty important to our neighborhood and those that use our neighborhood? So those are my comments.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Our next commenter.
We have Claire Wolf here to discuss the same topic.
All right.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Mr. McDaniel. My name is Claire Wolf. I am a resident of River Forest, lived there since 1973, a member of the growing demographic of senior citizens who plans to die in her home. Hopefully, I will not die on the streets of River Forest.
Would you
I'm
mind
here
giving
to
us
give you a little bit of history.
We need your
which-
address too.
I know. So the history is as follows. When we moved to River Forest in 1973, we had macadam roads. In 1981, they gave us a layer of whatever the asphalt was at that time. In 1985, we wrote to the city and said, our roads are falling apart. The city came out, looked at them and said, your roads do not have an adequate base. We cannot fix them correctly. We will patch you. And patch we have been for the last 37 years. My math isn't very good. In 2016, on our 60th anniversary, River Forest, and I'm sure you know this, River Forest is the first platted subdivision in Dublin, 1952, when we were a village and 800 registered voters. We celebrated our 60th anniversary in 2016. We wrote to the city and we said, our roads are deplorable. They came out and said, your roads are deplorable. We'll try and fix them. And then they came out in 2019 and said, your roads are so deplorable that we cannot fix them. We have heard this before. So we're going to do a study. We're going to do it correctly. We're going to fix your storm drainage because we do not have storm sewers, curbs, sidewalks. In fact, our mixed use paths, of which there are many in this budget, are our roads. So our roads are the walking system for the neighborhood, for the people from Donegal Cliffs and Amberley who come to our neighborhood and walk it. They are the mixed-use paths for our kids on their skateboards and on their bicycles and their roller skates. And the roads are dangerous. They're crumbling. So in 2019, they said, we'll do the study. We will put you on the budget for 2023. And then imagine our surprise when we saw that even though we have had our study, we are in the budget, we are going to be moved again to 2025. And I sat here while we listened at 5 o'clock to that gentleman, I don't know what his name was, who said, every time you delay a project, it costs more money. So I would say to you, now is the time, as promised, to fix our roads so that we can put a little bit of function and safety over beautification and mixed-use paths for the people who have been the longest residents of housing developments in this town. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lindsay, do we have another person that wants to comment, please?
Yes, Mayor. Tim Solak is here.
Live right on the corner of River Forest and Dublin Road. Been there since 1980. My kids went to school here, and this is our life here.
Could you just give us your address?
8025 Dublin Road.
Thank you.
So, I'm just going to add to what Lisa and Claire have said. I'm a retired senior engineer, so I can speak the engineering language. I've worked extensively with Mike Suter and Brian Gable even prior to bringing the architect engineer on. I worked with Mike and Brian to put out a survey to all the residents in our neighborhood. What do you want? What are you looking for in this design of these upgrades? And I collected it all, fed it back to Mike and Brian. And the biggest thing, and I think, and we'll take credit for it, we're saving a lot of millions of dollars because we didn't want sidewalks, we didn't want curbing, we didn't want lighting, we didn't want any of that. So that's, it made the design much simpler. So anyway, I've worked with Mike and Brian and then the architect engineer. Their reps came out to our meetings and stuff. And we've worked through the last year and a half to come up with a design of storm drainage and roadways that the neighbors, all our neighborhoods agree with. We've had one-on-one sessions between the architect engineer and individual residents about what's going to be done right in front of their home and stuff. And the design is complete. It was completed last year and it's ready for implementation. And the biggest thing is, like Claire and Lisa said, it's been put off, and it's only getting worse. And it used to be, our roads, River Forest, used to just be on your annual maintenance schedules. But when the engineers came out, your engineers came out and did the inspections, they said, this can't be maintained. We're breaking it out as a separate CIP standalone item that needs to be redone. You got to do the drainage. That's got to be done before you can do the sub base, before you can do the roadway. So anyway, it's all done. It's ready to go. And we see all these other projects going on. And I think we're getting a short end of the stick here. And like Lisa and Claire said, in the wintertime, when you get build up water that freezes over, it can be dangerous. And a lot of people, like Claire was saying, a lot of people walk, not just in River Forest, but from Amberley and down to Go Cliffs, because it's a very nice long route. I don't know, a mile and a half, 2 miles to walk around. And so we really would like to get this going. It was promised 19, then down to 23, and we just can't. Let's get it done. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Lindsay, was there anyone else that was signed up to make comments?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. I know Christina Ludo. We come from the same hood. My name is Sue Berg. I live at 5178 River Forest Road. I'm a realtor and I've lived there for 9 years. And I haven't been around as long as Claire. And I think that nobody in Dublin is like sinking into a 2-foot chuck hole in any neighborhood. But we see other activity going on in neighborhoods that have better roads than we do. I walk, 25 miles a week. I walk Amberley, Donegal, everywhere. Woods of Dublin, I walk everywhere. And their roads have been done long before ours have been looked at. And we have all sorts of activity in our neighborhood. People come to our neighborhood from all over. They park in front of my house, in fact, which is fine, to walk through our neighborhood. And as the sides and the edges of our neighborhood roads crumble, all the walkers are being forced inside, and the runners are too. Cars have to get through there. It's becoming somewhat dangerous. So just want to back up, the people in my neighborhood saying that we really don't want to wait anymore. And since the plan's already in place, we hope you'll consider implementing it and getting us paved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you bringing your comments forward, and I know that we had anticipated that you would be here this evening, and I know that our staff has some comments to make.
I'll refer to Paul Hammersmith or Bob Taylor if they have anything they want to speak to on this topic.
Yes, thank you, Dana. Bob actually, I'm going to raise this up just a hair. Bob actually put together a brief presentation to be able to share with council, just kind of walk you through the history and the reasoning from staff in terms of moving it 2 years within the CIP. So with that, I'll pass it to Bob, and then any questions we'll be glad to answer. I can open it. Yeah, I can get to it. Right. Return. There you go.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I appreciate the residents' comments and their passion for their neighborhood. And I'd like to share a little brief history and our plans for this project moving forward. Around 2017, as a lot of the residents mentioned here, the River Forest subdivision was added to the street maintenance program and was originally planned for 2019. As we progressed into that project, we realized that the majority of the problems were a result of poor roadway drainage. Therefore, it's a more comprehensive plan was developed, and then it was scheduled for 2023. It's very imperative that the drainage issues are addressed before or in conjunction with roadway work as to protect the pavement moving forward. So our 2019 pavement data shows that all the streets were in, at that time, fair condition, and a couple were actually in good condition there at the entrance. And our 2021 pavement condition basically shows that the conditions had not drastically changed. We inspect our pavements biannually using high definition video and artificial intelligence to determine what the condition of the pavement is. So as the project changed, like I noted, the pavement conditions were not deteriorating as quickly as we anticipated, and the project was moved to 2025 to balance our CIP program. So what we are planning to do between now and 2023 are some more spot repairs, some potential crack sealing, and also a lot of the areas that you've noticed your poor pavement in, that's primarily due to the poor drainage that I noticed. Also, additionally, the tree canopy is shading the roadway and does not allow it to dry out. So that we're going to look at potentially removing some of the tree canopy to allow to let more sun in, to allow the pavement to dry out, because that's going to help things significantly. We're currently also preparing our pavement repair estimates. The city engineer and I both independently went out and drove the streets today, and we concur that we're comfortable with the current conditions and the plan moving forward. As you can see here, here's some of the potential repair areas we noted. Some are smaller, some are larger. These are areas that we will plan to either repair or monitor over the next couple years. And I just want to let you know that we are very agile and proactive in addressing problems when and if they may arrive. Yes.
You'll have to come, you'll have to come forward. State your name and address, please.
Tara Amundsen, 5330 Ashford Road. I'm a resident of River Forest, and I just want to know, what rating system are you using to identify that the roads are in a fair condition?
It's based on the ASTM model for pavement conditions. We use a company called Road Biotics. And they, like I said, we take high definition video. They measure the distresses and the severity of those distresses to come up with a pavement rating based on the ASTM standard.
All right, I'm also a safety engineer. I'm familiar with ASTM. Can you give me the specific standard that you're referencing?
I'm sorry?
Can you give me the specific standard from ASTM that you're referencing?
I don't have the ASTM standard off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
We really appreciate the comments that you brought forward tonight. And certainly council needs to hear that you have concerns about your streets. And staff obviously is very interested in what you have to say. Normally, we do not have presentations during the 5-minute comment time, but knowing how important this is to you, we wanted to at least have someone here to answer some of your questions. So we will need to move on with our agenda this evening, but we do want you to know that our staff is totally available to you, to meet with you, to answer more questions, and to and obviously you've made council very aware of your concerns and your needs. So we appreciate you coming in, and we have a very long agenda tonight. So once again, thank you, and know that our staff is totally available to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd be glad to come out and walk, and I know Mr. Solak has worked with Brian Gable of our staff. Mike Sweeter is no longer with our staff as of recently, but no, we'd be more than happy to do that. And I know Brian has your contact, Mr. Solak, so we can make those arrangements.
Thank you all for coming and your comments. We appreciate them. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda this evening? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Jenny, will you please call roll?
Mr. Keeler,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Ms. Aludo,
Yes.
Mr. Reiner, Mayor Fox, Vice Mayor DeRosa.
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms.
Yes.
All right, we have a postponed item, Ordinance 30-22.
Adopting the 2023 through 2027 5-year capital improvements program.
Our staff report this evening is Director of Finance, Matt Stifler.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Staff recommend that you postpone this ordinance this evening to give us an opportunity to amend the ordinance as to your direction at our earlier work session this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comment we might have on this? All right. Council, are there any questions or discussions concerning this before we ask for a motion? No. I will make a motion to postpone the ordinance adopting the 2023-2027 5-year capital improvements program. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jenny. Will you please call roll?
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Second reading this evening, public hearing on ordinance 34-22.
Amending the annual appropriations for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2022.
Thank you. Staff report once again is Matt Stifler.
Good evening, council. There are no changes to this ordinance from the first hearing, and staff recommend your approval at tonight's council meeting.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment? Does council have any questions or discussions concerning this ordinance? Jenny, will you please call roll?
Mr. Reiner? Yes. Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ordinance 35-22.
Rezoning plus or minus 6.67 acres from MUR 4 Mixed Use Regional 4 Llewellyn Farms District to a PUD Planned Unit District Vista Community Church to utilize a developed site for religious or public assembly. This site is located on the east side of France Road, north of Park Center Avenue.
Our staff report this evening is our planning director, Jenny Roush.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. We have no changes from the first reading and staff's recommending approval of the ordinance.
Do we have any public comment on this ordinance? Council, do you have any questions? Any discussion? Hearing none. Jenny, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ordinance 36-22.
Authorizing the provision of certain incentives to Ease Logistics Services LLC to induce it to purchase an office building for the relocation of the company's existing office and the expansion of that office and its associated operations and workforce within the city, and authorizing the execution of an economic development agreement.
Our staff report this evening is our Economic Development Administrator, Janet Goring.
Good evening, members of council. As you may recall, we have been in discussions with Ease Logistics on the expansion of their company here in Dublin. Ease Logistics is a multi-operational supply chain and transportation solution company that provides accelerated, innovative services that help deliver products and goods to select clients by means of highly effective global network. The proposed incentive is a 13% performance incentive on withholdings over 5 years, valued at $421,000 for the term of the agreement in consideration of the company's continued investment and planned workforce in Dublin. The city is also proposing to install the double-link lateral connection to the purchase facility. The value of the connection is $32,416. Finally, the city is proposing a $200,000 location grant to offset moving and fit-up costs to encourage the local real estate investment and preparation of the building to become a corporate headquarters after being vacant for 3 years. Jobs Ohio, the state of Ohio's economic development agency, is also proposing economic development incentives to Ease to help retain and expand its workforce and investment in Ohio. Since the first reading on September 12, 2022, the economic development agreement document has been modified to reflect the specific building being purchased by Ease Logistics. The square footage of the building is 148,906 square feet, and the language has been modified to read to induce the company to purchase an approximate 150,000 square foot office building. The incentive proposal did not change, and no further changes were made to the document. Here with us this evening representing Ease Logistics is Abby Fela, a Director of Strategy and Innovation, and Abby will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Good. Mayor, City Council, thank you so much for allowing us to be here tonight and for the consideration of this incentive program. I am Abby Fela, the Director of Strategy and Innovation here at Ease. I work really closely with our CEO, Peter Cortola, on all of our real estate transactions and the growth that happens at Ease. He's really sorry he can't be here tonight, and thanks you for allowing me to be here in his place. He's actually visiting a client in New York, getting more business and hopefully allowing us to bring some of those new jobs into our great city. We're really excited about this. I feel like we've had a great partnership with the city so far. We're looking forward to growing that partnership. This building, when it came along, just seemed like the perfect opportunity for us to be able to add not just those 140 jobs, but expand beyond that as the years go on. As you know, Peter was born and raised in Dublin, is a lifelong Dublin resident, was really proud to start his company here, and wants nothing more than to revitalize this building and continue to grow Ease Logistics here in Dublin. So I appreciate your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for her? Hearing none. Do we have any public comment on this? All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And I just want to say it's been a pleasure working with your economic development team and everyone at the city. It's been a really fun opportunity for us to meet each other and grow.
Well, thank you. We love that compliment. They are the best of the best, you know.
They are the best of
All right. Council, any questions or discussions concerning this economic development agreement? Hearing none. Jenny, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Aludo,
Yes.
Mayor Fox,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms,
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa,
Yes.
Mr. Keeler,
Yes.
Mr. Reiner.
Yes.
Please extend our congratulations, and we're so happy to have Ease Logistics in their new building here. So thank you very much. Ordinance 37-22.
Adopting and enacting a supplement S52 to the Code of Ordinances for the City of Dublin, Ohio.
Our staff report is from our Law Director, Jennifer Redler.
Good evening, members of council. There have been no changes from the first reading of the ordinance, and staff recommends approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Any public comment? No, hearing none. Any questions or discussion? No? Jenny, will you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor DeRosa,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Mr. Keeler,
Yes.
Mr. Reiner, Mayor Fox,
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms,
Yes.
Ms. Aludo.
Yes.
Introduction and first reading of the public hearing ordinance, Ordinance 38-22.
Authorizing the provision of certain incentives to Vernova's LTD to induce it to lease a facility to relocate and expand its office and its associated operations and workforce, all within the city, and authorizing the execution of an economic development agreement.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Our staff report once again is Jenna.
Good evening again, members of council. We have been in discussions with Vernovus on the relocation of their company to the city of Dublin. Vernovus LTD is a locally owned and operated staffing and solutions firm that helps companies at all stages of growth complete critical business initiatives in the areas of technology, cybersecurity, accounting, and finance. Founded and headquartered in Ohio and serving the Midwest, Vernovus works closely with CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, and HR leaders to complete mission-critical projects on time and on budget. Vernovus is considering leasing a facility in the city of Dublin. The economic development agreement proposed is to Vernovus is a 15% performance incentive on withholdings over 3 years, valued at $26,000 for the term of the agreement, in consideration of the company's investment and planned workforce growth in Dublin. The city is also proposing a $10,000 location grant to offset moving and fit-up costs. The project would result in the location of 18 existing jobs, with 17 based in Dublin and 1 remote. In addition, the company expects to create 15 new employees for a total of 32 employees based within the city by December 31st, 2025. The project is anticipated to bring approximately $163,400 in net withholdings through 2025. The state of Ohio is also proposing economic development incentives to Vernovus to help retain and expand its workforce and investment in Ohio. Staff recommends council approves this ordinance on October 10th, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this? No. Council, do you have any questions for Jenny? Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Jenny, will you please call the roll? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I skipped down one. Our second reading and our public hearing is scheduled for October 10th, 2022. Introduction public hearing on Resolution 43-22.
Waiving competitive bidding and declaring sole source and authorizing the city manager to accept Columbus FiberNet's proposal for the purpose of fiber installation.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Our staff report is from our IT director, Michael Farrar.
Good evening, members of council. Jennifer Clues, Director of Economic Development, and I are here this evening we're seeking approval to to engage with official Columbus FiberNet to sole source the build of Dublin fiber conduit through the West Innovation District, waiving competitive bidding for the expansion. The expansion would extend down Shire Rings Road, up Cosgray Road, and terminate at 6777 Crosby Court. This project is originally proposed by Economic Development and approved by Council in 2021. Currently, there is no Dublin fiber in the West Innovation District. As the region grows, the city wants to be competitive and provide fiber to the curb to help attract new businesses and provide connectivity for those new and existing businesses and any other opportunities that may present themselves. Currently, the city of Dublin is already engaged with Official LLC to manage and maintain all of this existing Dublin conduit and fiber optic systems. Furthermore, they would be able to manage the system and ensure all the connections points and laterals are properly constructed. And finally, Fish will conduct all of our splicing in existing Dublin network that will enable these splices to be managed and supported in the same manner as the rest of the network. And would be welcome to answer any questions that you potentially may have.
Thank you, Michael. Any comments concerning this? No. Council, do you have some questions? Discussion? Amy?
I actually had a couple of questions. What are we doing to ensure we're getting a fair price from Fischl? I mean, I know they kind of have a monopoly in the Columbus area. They're the only ones that kind of do most of this work. But it sounds, I just want to know what kind of research, if you're checking other cities or other fair pricing to know how much this is going to cost us. Because if we're at their beck and call and we're saying, you're the only one who's doing all of our fiber from now on and forever, they can pretty much charge us whatever they want. So what assurances or what is staff looking at to ensure the pricing?
We do go out and look at some of the other construction costs for other builds that have happened in other regions. But I would say personally myself, and I know that this year, earlier this year, that there was a competitive research that was done on a previous Dublin expansion that I believe Dana proposed, and we have not reviewed that at this point, but we do check with other companies to see what's available. They have been supporting and maintaining our network, and they're a logical go-to point, as you stated. But we are going and testing the market to make sure that we are getting a fair price on this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? All right, Jenny, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner? Yes. Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Resolution 44-22.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for bridge inspection and other related bridge services within the city of Dublin's jurisdiction.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Our staff report is from Director of Asset Management and Support Services, Bob Taylor.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. 3 years ago, ODOT created a program to perform bridge inspections on behalf of cities with populations less than 50,000 residents. Since we are just under that threshold, we are able to enter in that agreement with ODOT. Prior to that, we had been contracting with Franklin County Engineers Office and subsequently paying them to do our bridge inspections for us on our behalf. ODOT contacted me, and they are going to extend this agreement for 1 more year while they work out the details to determine if they're going to continue this program or not. So that's the agreement in front of you tonight, is just extending that 3-year bridge inspection program for 1 more year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this? No. Do we have questions for Bob?
So
Chris?
in the document here, it defines a bridge of any structure of 10 feet or more clear span or 10 feet or more in diameter on on, above, or below a roadway.
Correct.
So will these inspections include the pedestrian bridges in Bridge Park that cross over top of the?
Excellent question. I know, I think there's 5 of them, I believe. Those bridges, quote unquote bridges, because they do meet the definition to which you refer, are going to be, and I've already contacted the owners of those bridges. They're going to be inspected by the private individuals or organizations or companies that own those respective bridges.
Okay, and will we get information on those inspections? I noticed as I go through there, there's been significant rusting and things along the bases of those.
Those structures have been entered into the state inventory system. So yes, after the inspections are performed, we will have access to the data of those inspections.
Great, thank you so much.
All right. Any
Just have
other questions, Amy?
Just a quick question. I'm assuming we're paying less with the ODOT agreement than we were with the Franklin County engineer?
We pay nothing.
Well, don't we pay for the one, I'm sure, don't we have municipal bridges that we will cover? Because didn't it say we had like 23 of, I don't know, what was it? It said that there was a total of like
54 and
54
44.
bridges total, but some of them aren't in their like Buckeye Asset System, are they? Or they all are? They're all covered?
All the bridges in the state of Ohio are in the state system, all the local bridges, all the county bridges.
So we don't have any purely like LPA ones that we're paying for?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
They're going to inspect all the bridges for which we are legally responsible to inspect as an ODOT program on our behalf at no cost.
Okay, thanks.
It's nice to get something for nothing, right? It's great.
At least for another year.
I know. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful service they provide. Are there any other questions? All right. Jenny, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner? Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Resolution 45-22.
Amending the Dublin City Council Rules of Order.
Thank you. Our staff report is by Jennifer Redler.
Good evening, members of council. Council discussed the recommendations of the Administrative Committee regarding council liaisons at the August 29th work session. Before you tonight is draft red line of the rules of order reflecting the discussion from the work session. These revisions will address liaisons appointed to both internal boards and commissions and external organizations. Council also discussed the internal boards and commissions to which liaisons might be appointed and determined that it would be prudent to appoint a liaison to the ARB to serve in addition to the currently appointed liaison to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That appointment will take place via another resolution when council decides to move forward. Staff recommends approval of Resolution 45-22, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this? Any questions for Jennifer? None? All right. Jenny, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Fox? Mr. Reiner? Yes. Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Resolution 46-22.
Authorizing the city manager to execute an amended ground lease with KSM Columbus LLC related to the Golf Club of Dublin and extending the terms of the current lease agreement.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Our staff report is from Deputy City Manager Robert Raines.
Thank you, members of council, and good evening. On December 7th, 2000, the city approved a ground lease and operating agreement with Tartan Golf Company for the construction and operation of a public golf course, which became the Golf Club of Dublin. The ground lease has been amended 3 times since then. Currently, New Era Golf Ohio, GCD, holds the current lease assignment and operates the golf course. In June 22, representatives from Bayberry Capital and Kemper Sports, as well as New Era Golf, met with city staff to discuss Bayberry potentially acquiring New Era Golf. As part of that proposed acquisition, Bayberry planned to enter a management agreement with Kemper Sports to manage the operations of the Golf Club of Dublin. As we finalized the acquisition and worked with Bayberry and Kemper on the lease assignment, Bayberry and Kemper reached a private agreement whereby the lease would be assigned directly to Kemper Sports rather than an assignment to Bayberry concurrent with a management agreement with Kemper Sports. I would add that as from a staff perspective, this is a positive because it creates a direct relationship with the proposed operator in the city. So in terms of background for Kemper Sports was founded in 1978 as a nationally known and full-service golf company. Kemper Sports owns, manages, and leases over 120 golf courses throughout the United States, including 45 municipally owned courses. Two of the top-rated municipally owned courses that Kemper Sports manages are Chambers Bay, Washington, which for those of you who follow golf may know hosted the 2015 U.S. Open, as well as Desert Willow Golf Course in California. I had the opportunity to meet with the city manager of Palm Desert, California at the recent ICMA conference in downtown Columbus, where Desert Willow Golf Course is located. And he shared with me that he highly recommends Kemper Sports as a partner with cities for the operation and management of municipally owned golf courses. On August 30th, representatives from Kemper Sports and city staff met with the residents, particularly residents from the Ballantrae community, to introduce Kemper Sports, to discuss the potential lease assignment, and to answer any questions that members of the community may have. That was a very well-attended meeting. There were approximately 80 to 90 residents that attended that meeting, so the room here was pretty well full. There were several questions, most pertaining to the operation of the golf course, particularly pond management, and we were able to have a productive meeting and answer resident questions regarding the potential lease assignment, and Kemper was able to introduce themselves and meet many members of the Ballantrae community. So with us tonight is Ben Blake. He's the Executive Vice President of Business Development, as well as several other members of the Kemper Sports executive staff. I'm going to turn the time over to Ben to introduce his team and to provide a presentation introducing Kemper to the city.
That one.
Hello.
Thank you.
Welcome to
It's
Dublin.
just one, but it's not that hard. Well, Robert, thank you for the introduction. It took about 3/4 of the presentation, so I won't repeat it. But my name is Ben Blake, Executive Vice President of Kemper Sports, a new business. My connection is I'm an OU Bobcat, and my wife and I are both graduates of OU, and she grew up in Springfield. I played a lot of golf in Columbus. I don't know if that qualifies me or not, but anyhow. But thank you very much for having us tonight. We're going to, I'll go through this quickly, just not to be repetitive. But in fact, yes, the company was started by Mr. Jim Kemper of Kemper Insurance back in '78. We've been in the business for 40 plus years. The way we operate is all the employees are our employees. So we have over 6,500 employees now, and sort of the entire infrastructure and resources of a company that size. Robert's hitting my button. Here we go. As he said, we have 35 public sector clients, which amounts to 45 golf courses. Within that space, we actually lease 7 golf courses, have 7 clients, similar to what we would like to do here in Dublin. 2 in California, which one of them is Desert Willow, which is regarded as basically probably the best public facility in Palm Springs area. We have 3 in New Jersey. One is called Rock Spring, which is considered the best public course in the sort of northern New Jersey, New York area, which is quite impressive. 1 in Maryland, and then we have a 36-hole facility in Chicago that we lease from both the state and the city, which is an interesting dynamic. But it is also considered one of the best public courses in the city, or in the city and in Illinois. And we manage more top 100 golf courses than any company in the country. And so we're very excited about the opportunity with the Golf Club of Dublin. We think it's a high-class, first-rate facility, and it really sort of fits the profile of the type of courses that not only do we like to be associated with, but we feel like we have a real skill set in that space. The way that we operate is that we bring the resources and the expertise of all the disciplines at an individual golf course: food and beverage, marketing, HR, agronomy. It's one of those businesses that seems fairly easy, but it's actually fairly complicated, largely because
you have these different types of businesses within businesses. And so part of the team here, which I'll introduce, is they're part of our operations team. Mark Hosing, who's Senior Vice President. And also the way we operate is we have what we call executive sponsors. So you always have someone from the company at the corporate level that Robert, the team, anybody could reach out to if there are any issues. Chris Toohey is one of our senior operating people. He is very experienced. He's won a bunch of awards in the company. And then Erica SB is our will be head of sales and marketing for the team here in Columbus. So we wanted to give you an opportunity to put a face with a name, but all of us are very excited. We've been working quite long on this project and feel like that we're quite prepared to take it on. One of the things about a company of our size that you would expect is that we have a number of sort of proprietary programs. The company, about 10 years ago, we really committed to our customer service program. And so we have an entire customer service training program. It's 5 modules that you do online or at the course. And we actually ask all of our people to go through it every year. And that really, not only about how to treat the customer, but how to treat each other. And I think that we've all found in the workplace that's becoming as important as the outbound. So we really are committed to the True Service program. In terms of True Review, every time you play golf, you get a short survey in the mail or an email. It's only 5 questions, how did you like your round? How was the food and beverage, et cetera? But always the ultimate question, would you recommend this course to a friend? So we really track that. We share it internally with all the senior management team, and actually you have access to the results of that as well. So sort of a way for you to measure our results, and we believe in total transparency. So we feel like we're very comfortable letting our customers vote and tell us how we're doing. The other program we're really committed to is Green to a T, which is our environmental sustainability program. We have 4 levels there, and many of our golf courses participate at various levels, but it's something that I think we're all committed to personally, and certainly when you have a facility like ours that generates waste, and also on the golf course side, we're very, very cognizant of the whole environmental aspect. As I said earlier, True Service is really the pillar of our company. It's something that we really have created a culture, and we try to create that same culture at the site level. So it's because, quite frankly, it works. We've now had it for 10 years, and it's really proven to be a very much of an influence on how we operate as a company and how we operate at the individual courses. One thing about Kemper Sports is while we have, national scope and all these courses, we really believe these are local businesses. They're local communities. They have their own dynamics. You all have your own goals and objectives that may be different from other communities. So we really look at these as a localized business. And what we do is we, of course, have the national scope just in terms of learning from the other courses. But what we'll do here will be based on what you all want in terms of the goals and objectives of the golf course and what the customers want in terms of, a product and how it's operated. We do a lot of sales and marketing. I'm not going to go through this, but, we believe sales and marketing is big, is a huge component of any golf course. Clearly, the Golf Club of Dublin is already a busy golf course. As part of our meeting with the residents, there's concern about tee time access. There's concern about, maybe too many events, some things that we're aware of and that we will address. And it's part of this two-way communication that we have with the community and with the customers, trying to make sure that we balance both our business in terms of having people play, but also very much the concerns of the citizens. I mean, this is owned by the city of Dublin, and so the residents certainly should have certain priorities and rights and advantages over non-residents. And so we're very much used to dealing with that, given our experience on the municipal side, and it's something that we'll address immediately. We, of course, again, on sales and marketing, we use a lot of data. We're happy to share all that data with you. What we found more and more recently is cities want to know how other courses are doing, and that we use a lot more comps than we used to, so that the council has a good sense of not only revenue side, but especially on the cost side. How do we compare in terms of golf course maintenance costs, for example? How do we compare, on all these various metrics? And we also offer all our discounts to the city. Certainly, you have your discounts too, but we have tremendous buying power based on our 120 courses, and we pass all those 100% to the city. We don't drag any of that from a discount standpoint. So, why are we what we believe we're a great partner? We have a great team, and I think we have a culture, as I said earlier, that we've created that really we're all golf people, and we want this to work, and we want to be good partners, and we want to be our reputation and image and brand is just important to us as yours is to your city and as to the Golf Club of Dublin. So we're all sort of rowing in the same direction. As I said, we're big from a size standpoint, but we believe these are local businesses, and you get the benefit of all of the things that we've learned in our best practices. Customer service is the way we operate. We're very much a numbers-oriented company when you need data and information and things that the council can use. Appreciate Robert saying that, the city manager from Desert Willow, which is one of our huge projects, is a 36-hole facility, speaks highly of us. That makes us feel good. And then ultimately, we're very much client-centric and transparent. So sort of is, you get what you see here, and we're very open to whatever information you need or have, or any questions or any issues. We just try to address them immediately. So thank you for your time, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it too. We may have questions for you, not sure. We'll see if we have any public comment. Do we? No. Questions from council? Chris?
I have a couple. The facility is a little more than 20, closing on 25 years. There's 50 years left on the land lease, the master lease there. Do you have capital projects earmarked for that facility?
Yes. As you may or may not know, there's a clause in the lease that says 4% of the greens fees and card fees revenue goes into a fund. As part of our due diligence, quite frankly, we had a complete review of the buildings, and they need work. And, it's like we all know, with buildings are tough because the stuff you spend the money on, you can't see, HVAC and some of the things. So yes, that'll be a priority for us, both cosmetically. I mean, the buildings look worn, quite frankly, and, they have to be serviced, and HVAC and roof and things are getting older. So it's something that we believe in strongly, because if you're trying to have a first-class facility and maintain a certain image, you have to have a good product.
Are there on-course considerations as well?
Yeah, the on-course, I think, is in pretty good shape. There's always, wear and tear, but I think that based on our due diligence, the buildings, especially the clubhouse, needs some initial things that need to be addressed. And the golf course seems like those things are always ongoing, bunkers, and New Era just redid the cart paths, which I think was a big improvement, and capital is ongoing. It's just one of those things that we'll always do.
And then you mentioned the training programs that you have that you put your staff through. Are you going to offer those opportunities to the existing staff?
Yes, absolutely. We're going to keep the existing team. We very much believe in, they've already done a nice job, and it's a successful facility. So we will offer employment to everybody who's currently there.
Great. Well, welcome. It's a special place. You don't get a lot of links courses like that around here.
Right.
So.
No, it really is. We have the opportunity to see a lot of courses all over the country, and this one truly is very nice and special, and it's in a great town. So we're very excited about it.
Thanks. Any other questions, John?
Yeah, my concern too is the clubhouse and the wear and tear on it. I've looked at it over the years, and I'm hoping you're going to inject some money into maintaining it. The other comment is related to dining. You got a great opportunity there, and I used to go there and eat a lot. Yeah, but it's been choppy, up, down, but the sun sets due west out there, and it's just an absolutely beautiful view for dining. So I don't know if you're going to try to improve that or not, because I think it's a good cash position for you to have that upgraded. So
Yeah. Well, it's amazing what outside dining has done at golf courses in the last 2 years. And what we've now found is people now want it. I mean, you know, and so it's turned out to be, from our perspective, an opportunity. And, you know, the facility is not just about golf. To your point, you've got residents there that don't play golf but want to use the facilities, whether it's dining or learning to play golf. And we have very much a big, you know, lesson program and all those kind of events type things. So yeah, our plan is to expand that and improve that and make sure that the outside dining is vibrant.
I'd just like to say that I'm really impressed by the presentation and the fact that you're interested in community relations. The staff and New Era has worked really hard over the last few years to create an understanding of the beautiful homes that border the golf course and the use of golf, you know, adjacent to your properties. And I know you're well aware of that. And in case any of the Ballantrae residents are listening, I know that you're entering into memorandums of understanding to continue that dialogue, to make sure that you offer the absolute best experience for not only your golfer, but for the people that own those beautiful homes along the golf course. So I say that because I know how important that is to the citizens, and I know that you know that by talking to our staff. So I just think it's great that you have mentioned that in your presentation and understand the importance of that.
Yeah, well, look, they have a vested interest in this with their home values, and they're our best customers. So, I mean, it's a two-way street, and we believe strongly in community relations. It's just part of the way that our company was started by a founder. It's a relationship business. And so we're totally committed to that and trying to make sure we can, you know, as you know, you can't make everybody happy, but you certainly try as best you can.
But we appreciate the fact that your memorandum of understanding is so specific and that you are addressing those issues that have been problematic in the past. And I know that it will be something that's easily remedied. So we thank you for that.
Great.
Is there any other questions or discussions? No? Jenny, will you please call roll?
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right.
Looking
Thank
forward to it.
you. Mhm. Resolution 47-22.
Accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
Introduce.
Our staff report is by Matt Stifler.
Good evening, members of council. This is a routine ordinance we do every year in order to set the tax rates. It's required to be to the auditor by October 1st so that they can properly bill residents for the next tax year. So if there are any questions, I'm available.
Any public comment on this? No? Any questions or discussion from council? Hearing none, Jenny, please call the roll.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
And under other business, proposed 2023 council meeting schedule. Council review of the calendar and any discussion. Is there any discussion? I think there's a note here that we had changed the retreat date to April 13th and 14th. All right. I would like,
I
Kathy?
just had a quick question. We changed that to sort of a full day on the 13th, did we? Okay, I didn't see that updated. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2023 meeting schedule and work session dates for 2023. May I have a second?
Second.
Jenny, will you please call roll?
Mayor Fox? Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner,
Yes.
Ms. Aludo,
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms.
Yes.
The next is a request for a DORA extension for Founder's Day, and our staff report is by the Director of Events, Allison Leroy.
And this is a fairly simple request. It's just asking for an extra hour of DORA this Sunday morning for the Founder's Day event. They've worked with the surrounding businesses such as Harvest Pizza to serve alcohol out the back that's facing their parking lot so that they didn't need to do their own alcohol at the event. Normally the DORA does start at 1 p.m., but they're asking for the hours to match the hours of the event, so it would start at noon on Sunday instead of 1 p.m. And I can answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this? Council, do you have any questions for Allison? None? All right. I'll make a motion to approve the DORA extension request for Founder's Day. May I have a second?
Second.
Jenny, please call roll.
Mr. Reiner,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Ms. Aludo,
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms.
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa.
Yes.
Mr. Keeler,
Yes.
and Mayor Fox.
Yes. The North Riverview Advisory Committee recommendation is next, and our staff report is by Management Analyst Kendall Blake.
Good evening, members of council. We wanted to take this opportunity to provide an update on the North Riverview Advisory Committee, the RFP process, and the responses. You'll remember the location of the boundaries of the properties. There are 6 properties along the west side of North Riverview Street and 2 along the east side, all just north of Bridge Street. The advisory committee is made up of the members listed on the screen, created from council, boards, community groups, and staff. The committee's role is as shown here with the corresponding dates they were completed. Tonight, we are at the recommendation step, which is the recommendation of a proposal selection to council. As a reminder, the selected RFP goals were confirmed by council include the preservation of historic character, the contribution of the properties to the historic district, the enhancement of the neighborhood, encouragement of vibrancy and use, provision of experience for timely completion of the project by the proposer, the preservation of the historic stone walls, and the documentation of historical details prior to any removal. The RFP timeline, including the dates, are shown here. There was a 9-week window to respond. 64 RFP downloads were recorded from the website, 23 of which were from individuals. The RFP was advertised on social media, including Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, as well as the city's website. 4 addendums were published, which were included in your packet as well. 2 pre-proposal site tours were conducted. 20 individuals came on May 9th, and 0 came on June 13th. There were 2 proposals that were received, one from Corinthian Fine Homes and one from Community Space Development LLC, also known as Cohatch. The advisory committee then met on August 1st and September 14th to review both proposals. The first proposal was from Corinthian Fine Homes. In their words, their proposal provides the opportunity to design and develop boutique single-family development with 9 new homes shown in blue. They plan to renovate 62 North Riverview Street and potentially donate it back to the city for a park building, possibly a museum. Corinthian determined that the existing historic structures on the west side of North Riverview were not economically feasible to restore, and they plan to have North Riverview Street for pedestrian use only. There's a central gathering space in yellow, outlined in red as well. The second proposal is from Community Space Development. I'll refer to them as CSD. And their proposal, it provides a concept to create the Riverview Village as a walkable arts and commerce district, a vibrant ecosystem of uses, including small businesses, makers, and arts, a one-of-a-kind destination, a walkable district with historic architecture, culinary options, handmade goods, local art, and educational experiences, and it restores and revitalizes this part of the district. The white buildings are the current existing buildings. They are all proposed to be restored. whereas the 7 green buildings are to be added new. The North Riverview Street would also, in this proposal, be pedestrian only. I'd like to point out for further discussion, the area in red is requested to be used for office commercial, which is currently in the Riverside Crossing Park Master Plan that was adopted by council in 2016 as parkland. And the next area, the next area is the 3 southernmost properties. They were identified for renovation by others, or possibly as residences, or they could potentially even be retained by the city for ownership. Full details were included in their proposal in your packet. So again, on August 1st, the advisory committee met to discuss and evaluate both proposals. They evaluated the proposals against the criteria from the RFP that is outlined here. The committee discussed the need for additional conversation with community space development to understand the proposal more fully before making a recommendation to council, and highlighted a number of topics to discuss, which included site details and challenges, proposed uses, and cost details. So community space development was invited to make a presentation to the committee on these topics on September 14th. After discussion and analysis of the proposals, the committee determined that of the 2 proposals, the community space development concept proposal best addressed the preservation, pedestrian activity, historic character, and public experience goals, although further evaluation is still needed, including the use of designated riverfront parkland as outlined, density, the uncertainty of the use of the southernmost homes. At this time, the advisory committee does recommend that City Council approve of the community space development proposal for further consideration, and to direct staff to further evaluate and negotiate the proposal through the development process. And as a reminder, staff will continue to brief council as a whole in the appropriate forum on the progress of any negotiations and development. Further, the committee does propose the following discussion items for you tonight as outlined in the memo. Regarding the CSD proposal, what are council's thoughts on the inclusion of a portion of designated parkland for future office and commercial uses? The potential need to subsidize maker spaces for their financial viability, and the vision for the 3 southernmost homes. Alternatively, the committee also requests discussion on the proposed concept versus selling each parcel individually for residential or live-work spaces as other viable options. And finally, staff wants to thank the committee for their time and its diligent participation and thoughtful insight on this very important project. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Kendall. Could you put the questions back up and leave those up for us? Thank you. Is there any public comment? All right. Council, this is an opportunity to discuss the proposal and ask questions. And we do have some members of council here that sat on that advisory committee too. So questions?
Yeah, I'm curious, the return on investment for the city, we had over $1 million into this project. On the community space development, what's the city's benefit for that, other than the obvious of the site, what you're doing?
Yeah, so at this time, that is difficult to determine based on the public improvements that aren't fully known at this point. So the city did obviously purchase the properties at $1.95 million back in January of 2021. And then as a part of CSD's proposal, they're also asking for a grant of $300,000 for 10 years. And then in addition would be the public improvements. So all of that would be hashed out in the development process. So it's difficult to get a whole number at the moment.
Okay. So actually, there's no return on investment. We're going to be investing in this project, correct? And
I'll attempt to answer that. So again, we received 2 proposals.
right.
The proposal that we're suggesting we further evaluate lends a lot of creativity and imagination to the space, which, exceeded my expectations. The fallback position for me was more or less restore those properties to what they would have looked like when they were built and have them be single-family homes. This proposal activates the area. And so the return on investment is kind of a sticky wicket. I mean, it's very difficult to measure that. As any businessman would do, they ask for everything. So there's significant contribution of city dollars to this deal as it stands. What we have to hash out is a happy medium, a compromise that works for the residents and works for the developer. But before we waste any time evaluating this plan, the deal breaker is the office building on the east side to the south of the existing structure, the red house. If that office building cannot be built, the developer cannot make this deal feasible for him. So the question for council, first and foremost, is, are we willing to give up some of that parkland and put an office on it? And in return, we get a destination for visitors to the city of Dublin. We get a draw of maker spaces, glass blowing, woodworking, things like that. So it's a very creative concept, but the developer will acknowledge, and he's free to speak for himself, there are a million details that need to be worked out. But the most important one is if city council is willing to forfeit some of the ground to the south of that house.
You know, to me, it's really more than that. This is an opportunity for a developer to expand in a pretty interesting area that has a lot of value. I think the RFP goals that you listed could be accomplished by private people who purchase those homes and restore them. I mean, if you read down the list of what you're expecting, I think that could be accomplished by auctioning off the houses and returning the money back to the city, meanwhile maintaining or keeping the park space. So I don't know if, and not knowing where this is going to end and the total expense of doing all this, if the mission was to create artists' nooks, like, and I can't remember whether it was Franklin, Tennessee, or where we were on a trip, possibly the place where Oscars might be redeveloped is the city in that redevelopment requests that there's 3 to 5 spaces that are on the main drag of Dublin, downtown Dublin, on a high street where, you know, those places become homes for potential artists. I don't know if this would be that big of a draw where it's located. And then you're giving up a lot, and you don't really know the final expenses that you're going to incur in this. When the flip side of this is, you know, that there's going to be revenue coming back into the coffers of the city. So my take on it is, you know, this is probably best done by auctioning off those, but keeping to the RFP plan that the goals of restoration are, you know, occur. There's other things can be done with those spaces, which you sort of look at this and you think of German Village in some of these areas. The areas behind there where there's parking or garages or sheds or old buildings actually could be redeveloped by the person who buys each one of these houses and then puts either a condominium upstairs and continues the parking underneath. So there's a lot of opportunity here if you run this through the ARB and have them stick to their guns and allow some leniency in the development of each of these sites. They could become premier single-family sites for people that want to take the risk, and we all know how bad the houses are and want to invest in there. But it'd be interesting to see how much money could be returned to the city by not following this. And this is an interesting road to go down, and it looks similar to a neighboring one where I think we gave pretty good financial benefit to the people who developed the old was it Brazen Head. So I don't know if I really want to go do that again. That's my comments on it. Thank you.
Other comments, Kathy?
I had a question. On page 23 of the document, there was a ROI calculation done that shows that Dublin would have a return on investment ranging from a low end of like 14% to a high end of 26.9. So could someone explain how do we arrive at that type of an ROI? Because we were just talking about it's nebulous, but somebody did that work in here. So I'm just, if we're going to talk about the dollars and cents, could somebody speak to that?
Absolutely. Matt Stifler.
I wish I had clarity. I know we asked him about that and I don't recall the answer, but I'm not able to duplicate that ROI. They say in the note that it's city returns based on tax revenue versus capital contributed to the Riverview Village. But I'm not sure that they understand property tax revenue doesn't come to the city. Like, I think that is in the category of needs further discussion should this idea advance. I don't know that that's fully been fleshed out at this point.
Kendall, you want to introduce the representative?
Yeah, so Matt Davis from Cohatch is here with us this evening and probably can speak the best to those numbers since they were the ones that developed that in their proposal.
Can you turn the mic on for us? Right, just push the button. Thank you very much.
There you go. Better? Yeah. Cool. My name is Matt Davis. I'm the CEO and founder of Cohatch. First, it'd be an honor to work on this project. I think it's a legacy project, not only for my family, but my company and also historic Dublin. I'm very passionate about historic restoration. Cohatch has over 20 locations, 20 under construction. There's only one new build in all of our portfolio because we're very passionate about restoring and creating new modern uses for towns. The one new build's actually in your backyard. We own the old Brazen Head North High building, restored that. And just last week, the new build in the back won a National Architectural Award for Design. So when we do things, we really try to do the best we possibly can in these towns. We tried extremely hard to not tear down anything. If you notice from all the proposals, we're the only one that had the ability in a proposal to do that. In doing that, we think it's the main reason I think it's extremely important as you walk across the Link Bridge to actually see something historic. With the proposed uses of Oscars, there's a good chance you see nothing historic anymore when you walk across that bridge. In order to do that project, Cohatch, we have sold out of our location. We have over 150 companies working in 10,000 square feet. We have several national headquarters of small and growing companies, all of which have outgrown our space and we're looking to place. Part of the uses, I think you have to understand the uses of this in order to understand the return on investment. We'd be the office building that you're talking about in the parkland. We tried the design where it did not interfere with the park. The only thing we did was we actually moved the staircase that was actually tearing down the red building in the current park design, by the way. So you had to move it out of that building so it didn't tear it down. And then we were going to build, it's actually one building, it looks like three. It'd be a sister building to the current building that we already built. So you'd have a sister building in the red building in the park that's already there, the current North High building, our building, and then a new Cohatch building there, where we're looking at putting our expanded, we're going national, and as well as several other large company headquarters inside of that building. And the buildings right behind it would be kind of expanded uses for other large tech companies that are trying to grow from 5 people to 25 people and relocate tons of jobs to those buildings. Currently, we're relocating them out of Dublin because we're out of space, and those buildings they all want to stay in Dublin. So between kind of startup other companies and using the houses behind us, there is a restaurant use on the primary corner, which is the most difficult building to use in that whole thing. I forget the address, but it's the one anyone know the address? The one on the corner there, far right. And then we had to fill the infill, because if you want to create a destination that's walkable, you have to have an eclectic bunch of uses that create critical mass for an ecosystem. And if you read our proposal, we're not going to try to do this alone. We brought in CCAD. They're interested in coming up to be the expert in art and help program the space. We'd be working with North High and hopefully extending the door to be able to walk through the whole thing. And then the most difficult part of the project is the final 3 houses at the end. The current uses, there's probably 4 different options for them. Ms. Fox, your proposal, I've thought about quite a bit more as far as your bed and breakfast. If you were actually going to do it, I think you need to make all 6 of those buildings one contiguous bed and breakfast with one operator. You might be able to get there.
as far as economic benefit of doing that. The other use is what I consider the fully restored parade of homes, if you will. So if you ever want to go there and you want to buy anything that's handmade, wood tables, furniture, have a cocktail as you walk through it, everything in there would be for sale. You'll be able to know your home remodeler, anyone who could do any work inside of your residential house would all be through that back section. We interviewed over 15 makers. Not one of them wanted space in an A+ high-end brand new district. Not one of them could afford it, but they all wanted to extend their brand and be available to buy things and have an experience to extend their brand and grow inside us in this location. So overall, the return on investment in your calculation, I do understand the property tax thing. I think there needs to be a TIF for the streets. All the streets need to be redone. I also think all the income tax generated by over hundreds and hundreds of new jobs, high-paying jobs inside a village of tech and community, the makerspace being programmed so that you could have education for the makers on things like NFTs, the future of using technology to use digital art needs to be done. It could all be done in that village inside of it. So the overall ROI is based off of income tax dollars, not property tax dollars. And it's if you divide it by your $2 million investment plus the grants, it's easy to get the math. So that's what it's based off of.
So for the revenue on your side, is that based off of leases and rents and things like that?
Yeah, to be brutally honest with it, the biggest headwinds of this project are the rising interest rate and the cost of construction. It's up 3 points since I proposed this, right? The biggest cost in that whole thing is called debt service, right? It's over 80% of the cost. So honestly, what we're trying to figure out how to do is actually make this happen, because it's almost impossible to restore 7 2,000 square foot buildings for 1.some million each and turn them around and sell them. I don't know anyone who would do that. So if you could sell them off individually to residents and spend 1.2 on each one, do it, right? But you're not going to get any vibrancy. You're going to have 8 people back there. So to me, this is not a residential district. It's behind commercial, and you connect it to the link bridge. And I think the other critical infrastructure, not to get a tangent, is the staircase behind no soliciting off the bridge needs to be extended down so you get people off the bridge down into this area. And that park, those those paths are still the same. So all that park could stay. It's actually those buildings be cantilevered off a cliff. So you're actually giving up nothing on that build to create that.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question. I just want to reiterate that the advisory committee at this point, I mean, nothing's really off the table. All we're asking is for permission here tonight to continue conversations with Cohatch to see if it's going to be possible. The one, again, as Andy said, the deal breaker was if there's not a majority of council who's willing to allow them to build on that east side, then there's not going to be much discussion. But if that's a possibility that they can build on the east side, then there's more discussion to be had. But we're not saying this is exactly the right plan or anything like that. All we're asking for is if we have enough to keep talking.
Look, I think this area has been sitting around and languishing for a really long time. It does not hurt us to sit down and have a discussion and to think through, maybe based off of this sort of concept of what that could possibly mean. I'd be okay with looking at the parkland as well as part of that process, but we have to do something down here. It's rough. I think all of us have toured the buildings and toured the structures and see what they look like inside. And this beautiful little niche area, there could be a beautiful little niche area, is not getting any better anytime quickly without some kind of attention. I'd be really open to having conversations.
I think it's important to have the conversation. It does, I think one of the important considerations in terms of our commitment to the taxpayer is, the parking garage behind the library was tens of millions of dollars, that was supposed to spur development in the area. And then, the forfeiture of Brazen Head and the economic development agreement for that building was done in order to spur economic development, that would be self-sustaining and self-sufficient. So, certainly this is an attractive thought. It would be nice to have something that is engaging and that is active there. And I think for us, the question is, are we going to continue to do things that are going to hopefully spur that the next thing can happen on its own? Or if we have resigned, everything's going to have to be a public-private partnership such as this, and we'll have to put skin in every game. Maybe the answer is yes, I don't know. But, we just seem to be walking down this path of thinking, okay, we've done enough. Now it should be able to take off on its own. And maybe we just haven't reached that point yet. I don't know. But for me, if staff was going to consider, continuing the conversations with Coach, which I would be supportive of, we have to figure that out of, how long do we continue to participate in these?
I have to say, I find the concept of the Riverview Village very intriguing. I think bringing the vitality down there is exactly the right approach. And I sincerely appreciate your raising your hand. I think you have shown a commitment to doing quality work in our community, certainly and around, and sincerely appreciate that. When I look at this picture, I would say the only thing that I look at the overall density of this, and it's hard for me to get my head around it. When you mentioned earlier that you wanted to do sort of 3 sister properties to what you have now, that's a pretty high density on that east side. So I know the blocks don't do it any justice, and it's not fair of me to look at those and say that. But my only I guess, piece of suggestion is, as we move it forward, if it's going to feel like a village, the scale and the scope of this it's going to be important to keep that village, or otherwise it'll feel like large buildings with small, I don't know, restored buildings, and maybe that's what you're going for. But when I look at the overall density of this, and maybe that's what's required to make the math work in your ROI projections. But my only caution on working on the east side is just to make sure it adds to the view and it doesn't feel like it's dominating the view. And again, I know this is not fair. So
Do you have the actual renderings of the pictures?
And while she's pulling up, I will say that that exact point came out multiple times at the advisory committee. And the point being too is this is not yet to a stage to even compare to the ARB guidelines, our historic district guidelines, and the massing and lot coverage. So those may end up being deal breaker. We don't know at this point, exactly how much could fit on there versus how much they need. And but I'd reiterate that, as Andy said, they absolutely needed something on that east side. So if we don't have 4 people willing to give up a little bit of parkland, that's the key factor. If we have 4 that are willing to give up a little bit, and we're not saying how much at this point, but then, yeah, all those other details, we're just not there yet.
It's a little misleading because that building, our current building, if you know it, is 10,000 square feet. Actually, every building proposed on there is 1 story. So
it is.
It's 1 story.
Okay.
The cliff goes like this. So
Okay.
if you look at the density of the site, it's actually the same height as all the houses. So that's why I wanted you to pull up the renderings. 10,000 square feet's the same size as our current building, spread out over a longer distance but it's only, keep going if you do, so you can see the density there.
Yeah.
So there's the height that matches the current red building that's a cliff.
Okay. So that feels quite different than the green blobs on that.
Yeah, I think the most important.
And green blob is a technical term.
Here's what.
Yeah.
Go to the next one. And then the next one. I think you have to restore that thing. I mean, it's the most beautiful thing you'll ever see compared to the South. And you have to figure out how to use those things and engage people on it with that park. So if you go to the next one, this is really what you need to create, I believe, is the final picture. Maybe. Next one, sorry. That one. I think if you move that staircase south and you connect it, you'll actually see that house from the bridge. That house is the most interesting thing in that picture. And you have a sister building at top right. That will draw everyone off that bridge to actually eat. And you're only using the like 30 feet of that cantilever cliff to do that, which is on that path. So you'd have vibrancy in that cafe, restaurant, bar connecting to the front of it. And you have to be able to drag people down the street. If you can't get people to want to go down the street, you can't create a village, right? So you have to captivate people to want to walk through it. And that's why we build it like this. I think that's the most important view you can create, regardless of what it is, what that building.
I wouldn't mind contemplating some development on the east side of that street. You know, if that's part of a land contribution or something into the deal, but I don't disagree. I've always thought that Riverview, North Riverview should be a pedestrian road. No other home has a road in the front and the back of it, and it's really unnecessary, and it's a very pleasant place to walk.
And you need to, the part of this is you have to connect High Street down through the current buildings to walk to create like a overarching village. Want to get people down there, right? So you have to connect the thing through the bridge. Like you have a unique opportunity between the bridge, High Street, Bridge Street, the park to actually create something. But you have to put a brand around. Sorry, you have to create a brand around to get people to come from Columbus to it. If you don't put a brand around it, it's just old houses with some crafts in it.
You know, what you say is true. You got to lure them down from the bridge, and of course that's going to be we have to create another entire passageway from the bridge down into that area. This is probably one of our last really interesting and very valuable pieces of ground, I think, just because of its proximity to Bridge Street. Let's be honest. So, I guess my issues with it is, you know, what's the investment from us that you're expecting? And I don't disagree that, you know, creating a village concept down there is really sort of interesting. I do disagree with the fact that, you know, the kind of tax revenue from artists is usually pretty.
Not artists.
Yeah, there aren't any, and you know, it's pretty low seeing art colonies and stuff established. But so, you know, I'm not sure if personal economics of you sell each of these parcels off and let the people through the ARB develop them to their fullest potential, that's not a better revenue source. And that, you know, to me, that's versus, you know, we're going to create an interesting village here that I don't know what the bottom line is to do that.
Well, I just want to make sure you understand what Cohatch is, though. So Cohatch is a co-working and shared office space that post-COVID is growing rapidly, that we have over 300 full-time jobs, probably on average of 70 to 150,000 in one building. So all the income tax has nothing to do with the makers or the artists. I wouldn't count on that either.
No.
It all comes from the headquarters of the startups and the companies that are going to have jobs there. That's where the income tax, not from the artists. And that's why we need the office building.
So I sat on the advisory committee too, and I believe that the conversation is worthwhile. The concept, to me, is very close to what we were asking for at the RFP. My concern, and I voiced this at the advisory committee, is that the trade-off of the investment in the end must guarantee that this is a vibrant and stays that way in the objectives of being that those villages have to have the maker spaces. Because if you find that later on, those maker spaces or those little retail places or the little restaurants don't work and it gets turned into office, then we lose. The city loses. I love the fact that we actually have a mass of streetscape that's still historic. And for the dynamics of bringing people to the historic area, because there isn't that much historic north of 161. I think this will, if we can pull it together and the concept can actually be realized, and that area can become a central focus of a historic niche with a lot of interest in the way of maker spaces, eating, and be supported by more economic development income, I think it can be a grand slam. I think the conversation has to continue to know that. We don't know yet. I don't have an issue myself with giving up a small portion of land that integrates well and enhances the riverfront next to that red house, as long as it doesn't overwhelm the beauty of that riverfront and it makes you feel as if you've really come to a special place. I think the architecture will be important in that I think it can be very inviting or it could be very intrusive. So that's all I'll say, because most of my comments were incorporated. But I know that there are some concerns across the advisory committee, but I think everybody was open to the conversation. So are there any other questions or discussions? All right, so I will make a motion to approve the recommendations of the North Riverview Advisory Committee to select Community Space Development LLC's proposal for further consideration and to direct staff to further evaluate and negotiate the proposal through the development process. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Jenny, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Reservations.
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes. The next matter on the other business agenda is Tucci's tent request. We have staff report from Director of Planning, Jenny Roush.
Good evening again. As you mentioned, this is a request for a reinstallation of the temporary tent enclosure for the Tucci's space. As council's aware, the site is located on North High Street at 35 North High. The existing restaurant is located in the western portion of the site, with then the temporary tent that was installed as part of the executive orders during the COVID pandemic allowances was located along that North High Street frontage over the existing patio space. I thought I'd give a quick overview of the history just to reset ourselves on where we are in terms of the executive orders that were put in place when a state of emergency was established by the city. So that was back in March of 2020. This permitted the installation of temporary tents and patios to support our local businesses as part of the COVID pandemic. Tucci's installed their tent at that early November timeframe of 2020. Throughout this process, the executive order was extended 3 times during this timeframe. As part of that October extension request, City Council asked that any users or users that had the temporary tent or patio areas, that those applicants come forward to make arrangements toward a permanent solution. So that was part of that October request. It was then extended 2 other times within the final time frame, and deadline for the ending of these emergency measures was in June of 2022. And at that time, Tucci's, the owner of Tucci's, came forward to council to request additional time, and council determined the deadline would remain at that June 13th, 2022 timeframe. In terms of then the specific project history for pursuing a permanent enclosure request for Tucci's itself. As part of that October discussion, Tucci's did come forward then and get a concept plan approved at the ARB. At that time, the request was to modify the existing temporary structure to try to retain that in some capacity, as opposed to making further permanent modifications or installing a completely new structure. So that was approved by ARB with conditions to look at how that would fit into the district in a little more seamless fashion. The applicant then reviewed that and ultimately came back in January and did an informal request to then look at 2 options for a permanent structure, finding that the feasibility of modifying that existing temporary structure was going to be really challenging. Subsequent to that, then in June of 2022, a preliminary development plan was submitted to staff, and ARB approved that in July. So that was then looking at the permanent solution with then some additional project scope for this site, including a kitchen addition to the rear and a reapproval of previously approved wine room. So the applicant is on track and submitted an application for a final development plan, which originally at the writing of this memo was October, but now looks like a November timeframe. But looking at that permanent solution then and working the way through the process to gain approval for that through ARB. So as I stated, the request is to reinstall the previous temporary tent. This is to accommodate an annual wine tasting event in October, with then the request to retain this previous tent up until February 1st of 2023. As some items that staff considered as part of the review of this request and ultimate recommendation was council had, as I stated previously, determined that the June timeframe was the deadline that they wanted to establish for these executive orders to end. Prior to that deadline, as I stated, the executive orders were extended 3 previous times. And as part of that June deadline, all owners have complied with that, including Tucci's. And those owners or users that wanted to obtain a permanent solution have done so as well. Staff had some concerns about inconsistencies that would potentially be created by permitting temporary allowance for a single user. And as I stated, Tucci's is already working through the process at ARB for this final development plan approval. And we do have an allowance within the code to permit a tent for a single use event, which could accommodate that October event. And that would obviously be a smaller scale, more temporary tent, but there is a process to accommodate that special event. So based on that, staff recommendation is that the request to install the temporary tent not be considered, and that the applicant pursue a single event tent that could be handled through an application to staff for this October event. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know the applicant is here as well.
Thank you, Jenny. I think we have the applicant here who wants to speak.
Craig Barnum, 35 North High Street, Tucci's.
Michael Sharp, I'm the general manager at Tucci's.
Michael Lusk, 6170 Riverside Drive, Dublin, Ohio. I'm the architect of record for the project. And I'd like to start out by thanking everyone for considering this request. We're very excited about this project. We think it's going to do great things for the historic district of Dublin, the urban fabric, the pedestrian experience. And we've been working almost a year now through the process with staff, and they've been very supportive. We've been to ARB twice. I think there's a lot of momentum to get this project done. It's come with a lot of challenges. I've been practicing architecture for 48 years, and I think this is probably the most challenging approval process I've ever been through. I understand it. There's a lot of design guidelines that have been written and codes that pertain to the historic district that we're trying to integrate into this project. I've had a number of conversations with Sarah Holt about the fact that this project doesn't nicely fit into some of those what was contemplated to be good design concepts and recommendations, but we're working through that. I have to say Sarah's been very helpful in guiding us through the process, and but it's been difficult and it's been frustrating at times, and it's taken a lot longer than any of us anticipated. And no one's fault. Nobody pointing fingers or anything like that. But it's just taken a lot of time, and the impact that it has on Craig and his businesses has really come to a head, because our goal and our charge from him was, I need it up for the 2023 Memorial Tournament. That's critical. You have to get it done by then. He wanted us to be in front of the ARB last month, and we, the amount of information that's required. I mean, we got to get to 90% drawings here, and we've done all kinds of exhibits and worked through all kinds of issues. And and last week I got another list of issues that we have to address. And I had a conversation with Sarah saying, look, there's just no way we can get you there in October. So what that means is that I've told Craig today, there's no way I can say with a straight face that you're going to be in there by the Memorial Tournament of next year with lead times and supply chain issues. It's not going to happen. And I think it really comes down to, in my mind, this request doesn't have anything to do with the previous ask or the COVID or any of that. If that had never happened, this request would still be valid today for two reasons. One, it's a real hardship at this point on him not making that. So our whole strategy of phasing this project for renovating the existing building, building a new building, how we keep him operational is out the window. I mean, it's not going to work anymore. So we got to develop a new strategy. And I believe that if we have this temporary use, if we can construct a temporary facility, again, that gives us a lot of options to how to service customers in that location while we do renovations inside. I don't know exactly all the details yet. This is all new in the last week, but I don't think it sets any kind of a precedent. This is no different than a job trailer being there temporarily or some other temporary thing on a site that's being developed. Another example I would give you is I'm on the Columbus Downtown Commission. So, we're very concerned about precedents as well. One of our previews is to make sure that buildings aren't just being torn down and becoming parking lots. Well, it's been a number of years ago, but Nationwide came to us and said, look, we have a master plan here that is going to develop this whole area, but we need these buildings torn down to use them for temporary parking while we do this, while we do this, while we do this. So it's a checker game. So we allowed it, even though it broke our rules. And I think this is very similar to that in that, we got a checker game here that we got to play to keep him operational, to keep him in business. And so, this time frame that it's taken has created a real hardship. We're trying to figure out how to deal with it. And I think we're asking for something that's very reasonable for a few months. It has nothing to do with other businesses doing it too and having a precedent. So I think that's the message that we have for you tonight. And I'm willing to take questions.
Thank you. We appreciate that, your comments and your request to come forward. Council, is there any other public comment? No. Council staff has recommended that council not consider the applicant's request, to install the tent to be kept in place until February 1, since the request for the final development plan has been submitted and is pending in front of the ARB. So discussion about, from any member, about objections about going along with council's recommendation, or any questions here?
Can I make a few comments too as well? I'm sorry.
Pardon?
Can I make a few comments? He was the introduction. I just wanted to chime in here. Well, thanks for hearing the request tonight. And I'm really excited for the future. We've been working on this project now for about a year. I'm confident that the final product that we are going to eventually put up is going to be a centerpiece down there. Lots of energy on the street. So I think getting to the finish line, I'm excited to get there, but these last probably 3 or 4 or 5 months have been extremely challenging, working with the ARB and, as Mike Luss has said, this is a very unusual process where we've had things on our plans that we've submitted for, let's say, 9 months. And then this last round, they never said anything about our signage. In this last round, they said, well, we don't like your signage. And from an applicant standpoint, that's really frustrating to say, well, 7 months ago, why didn't we talk about this? And every time we've submitted something, we've been given another round of issues to deal with. That's not a matter of just doing it in a day or two. These things take weeks. And so we've been diligent. We've been going through the process. We're spending a tremendous amount of resources. I am spending probably twice the amount of money that a normal applicant in a normal situation would spend. So from a business standpoint, I've been going through this process. And again, this is not a complaint. This is reality. I'm trying my best to get to the finish line. It's in the business's best interest to do this structure. There's going to be probably a 6-month construction process. Where I think this is a reasonable request is what we're doing and what we're asking for is a bridge to get us to a soft landing. Right now, we're going through a hardship when the structure came down, and thank you again, Dana McDaniel, for allowing the business to put it up for 1.5 years, but it established the business on much more solid ground. We were able to hire more full-time staff since we didn't lose half our seating during the winter. We hired better staff. So the business is was in a very, very good state. And now, without putting the structure back up until construction starts, I'm going to lose 30% of my staff. Forget about the sales loss and the money that we're incurring right now. I'm trying to bridge that gap to keep my fantastic staff intact. And this is going to allow me to do this by having the structure up for at least 4 more months. The other issue is starting construction. So we just lost a month with this new round of items to address by the city. Starting construction in November, December is not a good time to start construction. Also, with the chain supply right now, giving us another 2 or 3 months to get everything organized, get all our products ordered. We can't order anything until we get approvals, right? So until approval happens, we can't plan for anything. This allows us to get through the winter months, plan ahead, and start construction probably around February 1st or March 1st. I'm not going to make the tournament, and I'm not overly concerned. It would have been great to meet that deadline. I know the finished product is going to be fantastic. So this is a long-term solution.
Thank you. We'll need to move on. I'm reading across the council here that as I asked the question, and we want you to know how much we appreciate your investment in the historic district. And we also want you to know how much we appreciate you having a permanent solution and trying to bring some vitality to the front of Tucci's and all of that. The question before us tonight is about this temporary structure. It certainly has nothing to do with the investment that you have made in the past or the one you make in the future. I hope you understand that.
Yes.
It is simply a question about extending this temporary tent and structure as staff has requested that we do not accept this recommendation. If there is a motion to do so, I'll entertain it. If there is not a motion to do so, then what I will say, and we will open this to council for that, is that you know that you obviously have the ability to have a temporary structure with a permit for the wine event.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Is there a motion to entertain anything other than the staff's recommendation? So I thank you for coming here this evening and asking this of us. We certainly do want to support your business, but the recommendation is denied when it comes to putting up a temporary tent until the construction begins. But I hope that, and I know that our planning staff will help you get through the process. And we appreciate, as I said before, your presence and your investment in the historic district.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Barnum. The next item on our agenda is art in public places, and I believe that we have a couple of council members that will be recusing themselves from the discussion.
I'm going to abstain.
All right. Our staff report this evening is from Director, no. Yeah, all right, it is from Robert Rance.
Thank you, members of the council. Let me just get this pulled up really quickly. Thank you. This item comes before us to discuss the next potential next Art in Public Places project, particularly as it relates to an opportunity for state grant funding. So by way of background, in late May, the city was notified that the state capital budget included $175,000 for a public arts project on Muirfield Drive. Specifically, that was Substitute House Bill 687. To clarify, there was $75,000 in the previous state capital budget that was allocated for a kinetic art project in Muirfield, and then an additional $100,000 was added to that in this particular House bill for a public art. It broadened that to a public art project on Muirfield Drive, rather than definitively defining the type of art in terms of kinetic art that it would need to be. To be clear, the city did not apply for this. Well, we did not apply for this through the state capital process, and we weren't aware that the funds were being requested for the Muirfield Public Arts project. Since May, city staff has worked with the Dublin Arts Council, the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. The OFCC is the state entity which the grant would be administered through, to understand better the scope of the project, the grant requirements, and the best way to approach the project moving forward. I should add that the city has also been working with the Muirfield Association in this effort. Representatives from the Muirfield Association expressed awareness of the grant and interest in it being placed in Muirfield, specifically on Muirfield Association land, and we'll discuss that location in a moment. So as I said, the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission would administer the funds. Specific to that grant, the grantee must be a governmental entity or a nonprofit in Ohio with a long-term interest in the property. So as such, the Muirfield Association cannot receive the funding directly. In this instance, it needs to rely on the city to receive and administer these grant funds. There's also a 50% matching requirement for the project at $87,500 and a deadline of completion of June 30th, 2024. So as we sat down as a staff with DAC and with the representatives from Muirfield, we tried to approach this from the perspective of leveraging these funds towards the city's next Art in Public Places process. So in looking at that, the AIPP process was laid out. Where we stand right now would be at the beginning. So the site selection, review, and approval. The constraint here is that if we take the grant funds, the site must be on Muirfield Drive, not necessarily in Muirfield. Practically, there's very few places on Muirfield Drive that would house an art and public place project. There's currently the sculpture of Jack Nicholas just outside of Muirfield that exists already. So it's likely that the best locations would be in Muirfield. But nevertheless, there is that constraint if the grant funds are accepted. Public input would be required prior to the final site selection, and then it would go through the process of the Art in Public Places as identified and laid out with DAC and as part of the Public Art Master Plan. So there would be a call for artists, a selection committee would be convened to select 3 finalists. There would be a final site visit by the 3 finalists. Finalists would make presentations, and a selection by the committee would be made to recommend to City Council, which would have public input as a part of that process. And then, of course, DAC would propose the winning artist and concept to the City Council for final contract approval. So what that would look like specifically with this particular project, because there is the condition, if we choose to accept the grant funds, is that the site selection process, which I mentioned, would occur, which again would look at different potential sites. But nevertheless, if the site selected is owned by Muirfield Association, The property appraisal would need to be completed, and the land would need to be donated to the city because it needs to be land that is owned either by a nonprofit, not necessarily own a long-term interest, so either a 10-year lease, but in this instance, we would want to own it. So the city would need to accept that. That donation could go towards the match if necessary, again, if the site is owned by the Muirfield Association. And then we would go through the process for the art and public places. Knowing that there's a June 30th, 2024 deadline, we would recommend the call for artists later this year, and then move through the rest of it in the first and second quarter of 2023 for final, potential final approval of the contract by City Council in the second quarter of 2023, which would put us on track to have the artwork completed by the deadline on June 30th, 2024. The Muirfield Association has met with city staff and DAC on a potential location, and I'll show the specific location. In fact, I'll go to that right now. The location is just north of Whittingham Drive on Muirfield Drive. The full location is approximately 2.5 acres. You can see the red dot kind of shows a further out picture, and then you can see closer into the location on the right of the slide. We did take a look as staff at where the public art locations currently exist. So currently there's, according to DAC, there's 22 public art pieces throughout the city. And as you'll notice, there's very little art that far north of Brand Road existing. So much of the art is centered around the current DAC location as well as Kaufman Park. So that's just something for consideration that staff took a look at as we're considering this proposal. That being said, the proposal is not, the site rather proposed is not selected. It would still go through the AIPP process. So staff has taken a look at this and recommends some conditions to accept these funds as the next AIPP project. So first and foremost, the Muirfield Association or another private property owner, again, this is assuming that the land is owned by the Muirfield Association. The Muirfield Association would have to agree to have the project administered as the next Art and Public Places project, which means that it would be subject to the terms and conditions that any project goes through, although with the restriction that the site would need to be somewhere on Muirfield Drive per the grant requirements. If the land donation is necessary, the land must be deeded to the city and contributed towards the matching funds for the grant. It must meet all of the OFCC requirements for the grant funding. The city or DAC would be granted necessary temporary and permanent access easements for the construction and maintenance of the artwork. And then the Muirfield Association, we need to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the city to retain responsibility for maintenance of the property. So the city would maintain maintenance of the art pieces consistent with other public art. The Muirfield Association would maintain the property. Conversely, the city would then agree to receive and administer the grant funds for the project in Muirfield, again, assuming it's in Muirfield. It would agree to locate the AIPP project on Muirfield Drive, consistent with the requirements of the grant, contribute any hotel, motel, or AIPP funds to cover any gap in matching fund requirements if it's necessary, if the land would not appraise for the full $87,500. We would advance the funds necessary for administrative costs, design costs, and construction costs of the project. I would note that we would then seek reimbursement for construction costs. Administrative and design costs are not covered by the grant, but the city would seek reimbursement for the construction costs. Up to $175,000 is allocated to the grant to recover those funds advanced. And as I said, the city would assume maintenance responsibilities for the artwork consistent with other art and public places projects, and we would need to enter, as part of the grant, enter into a maintenance agreement with the state of Ohio. So staff does recommend proceeding with this project as the next Art and Public Places project based on the conditions of the grant and as previously described, and the conditions as previously described. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Matt Ehrman, who has had a significant amount of involvement, is here as well to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this? We don't. Council?
So I think I understand the origination of this, but just I want to kind of go through it again. So there's this grant money available and it's like 79,000.
175,000.
175,000 in grant money is available.
That's correct.
The Muirfield Association brought the idea forward.
That's our understanding, yes.
Okay. And we want art in public places as much as they do. It's, for Dublin residents, so that's all good. Help me understand, though, they donate the property that the art sits on to the city, because the art has to be on city property or a nonprofit, whatever. But what's the cost to the city for making this happen, and how much of it, if any, was already budgeted as part of the art in public places projects?
So in terms of upfront costs, the city budgets, right now there's $375,000 allocated to arts and public places out of hotel motel funds. So in terms of this particular project, the cost to the city upfront would be $30,000 to $50,000. We're estimating, I'd emphasize that we're estimating in administrative and design costs. Those costs cannot be recovered. They would be from that allocation that we have towards art and public places as it is. So that's not unexpected. We would be able to receive the money back for the construction, which is something that would not typically occur with an art and public places absent a grant like this. And then the ongoing cost would be the maintenance of the public art, which is consistent with how we maintain our other art and public places projects.
So really, this is just taking the place of another project that would have happened, and we're able to use grant money to do it?
Correct.
My concern, though, is that from what I can tell, the process for the art and public places usually is the public decides the location, correct? The whole community decides the location.
There's a public art review committee that has community involvement that makes a recommendation to the city council for the location of the public art.
Yeah, so the heartburn I'm having with this one is that it is a homeowners association that picked the location and not our community as a whole. I understand that going through the rest of the process of deciding the artwork would go through the art and public places process, but we're skipping the community involvement piece for the location.
Chime in on that. I think the nuance here is that you're right in the sense that the way the grant is, and again, when we say grant, it's the state capital fund, which, we get money for. In fact, the cemetery project that we are doing was from the same bill. The log cabin project, same money from state capital funding. So this is more restricted than you would normally have in an art and public places project in terms of confining more so where it goes. Along Muirfield Drive, because that's the definition, which is in Muirfield and not in Muirfield, is where it's technically a little bit more open game, if you will, and where the public would have input. But as Robert, and that would be all of Dublin, I don't think it is and should be left up to the association to decide. That by the AIPP process that we're referring is the process for helping to, and it's really the committee that helps to not determine, but to recommend a site. Council usually acts on approval of a set of site locations. So the nuance here is, I think Councilmember Keeler pointed out, you're really just putting this in place of the funding opportunity in the place of the next art and public places project, taking that funding and leveraging it. And it does restrict it a little bit more in terms of where it can go, but there's still some open opportunity. And I don't think it should be an association only process. It should be the community as a whole having input to that. I hope that helps. But
Any other questions? Any other thoughts here?
I was just going to say, that thought crossed my mind as well, but we wouldn't be doing it if they hadn't brought it forward. Number one, we're using other people's money, number two. And I do see Muirfield Drive as it's Dublin. You know, they are, I think, the largest neighborhood in the city. So that area represents a lot of residents, but it's also a thoroughfare that's traveled by many of us and biked by many of us. So I see it as an asset to the entire community.
Kathy?
So I'm going to ask a process question too, because that seems like what we're doing here tonight. So if it follows the process, which I think would all agree is fundamental to this, that first step, there would be a group that would come back to council and say, we looked at hypothetically 8 places, 7, whatever it is. And then there would be a presentation and discussion because as Dana mentioned, Muirfield Drive, it leaves Muirfield, right?
Correct.
It goes down to almost our first little roundabout down there. So there could potentially be places up and down that location as well. So it would be a process not administered by the Muirfield Association, but by this group who would then come back under the normal process and say, given the constraint of placement along a roadway, here are possible pros and cons of something. And council would then decide the location, is that correct?
That's correct. According to the Public Art Master Plan, that's the process that's laid out. The council retains the responsibility to select the site. I would also add, as Dana mentioned, that there will be not just Muirfield public involvement, but the whole city would be invited to that public involvement as part of the site selection process that the Public Art Review Committee would engage in.
So that Public Art Review Committee is made up of whom?
Dublin Arts Council appoints members, the city appoints members, and then there by a joint appointment, there's members that represent business interests and other interests in the community.
So that really is representative of the entire community.
That's
That is
correct.
not that is not associated with any particular association, if you will. Okay, so then it would come back, a location would be picked, and then as the current process, and there would be requests for proposal and artists would come in, et cetera, so forth.
That's correct.
And there would be significant public involvement. So the actual piece of art itself would follow that same process.
Absolutely.
And that recommendation would come back and be decided by the same group.
That's correct. The same group would go through the whole process, and similar to the boat in the field, not similar, we would have public input as part of it prior, but the process would be similar in the sense that that group would come and present their selection for contract approval to the city council.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is a bit, I don't know what the word is, a bit difficult that we got the money before the process and we find ourselves in this situation. I mean, it puts it in a sort of we've got to be sure that the process works right, but it is a $175,000 gift to the citizens of the community, if you will, for some art that we would normally do. So given all of the, I don't know, sequence of steps that we might not occur, I think if we continue to follow the process that we've committed to the community and committed to ourselves, then it is something that would benefit the citizenry and would make some sense. That's sort of my particular view on that. Thank you.
Robert, can you speak a little to the 2024 deadline?
The 2024 deadline is instituted as part of the grant requirements from the OFCC. So that's where that 2024 deadline is coming from.
And is that not a renewable? So that has an expiration, or is that?
That's something that my understanding, and Matt Ehrman can speak to this, but we can request extensions if necessary. And I'm getting the head nod, and they have typically we've gone through this process before. They've been very great to work with and look favorably upon that.
Because it could be there until that money was reappropriated in a subsequent state budget, right?
Right. It's the OFCC's interest for us to do the project and spend the money.
Thanks. I have one other question. So is the grant specific to the city of Dublin is the administrator, or is it just any nonprofit can step up and be the administrator?
Yeah, I mean, that could be the case. In this instance, we've discussed that we feel the most logical, and because we have experience with this and we do art in public places, we feel that that we would be the appropriate entity to administer the grant.
Okay, but it doesn't specify that we are the.
Not as far as we know.
The money wasn't awarded to the city of Dublin.
That's correct.
It just says, hey, this project is out there, we're going to give money to, and technically any other nonprofit could step up and administer it.
And we asked the OFCC that question specifically, and they gave that answer, that it really theoretically could be any nonprofit. We're recommending that it be the city.
And the reason we would recommend that is I think in my conversations with David Guillaume, and I don't want to represent David, but I've had another conversation with David Guillaume today. And I think probably the only other likely entity that could carry the ball on this would be the Arts Council. And not the only one, maybe there's others that could do it and administer it appropriately. And I think in my conversation with him, we resolved we don't want to do two of these at once. This is in the cycle of another art in public places, and he doesn't have the capacity to do two at the same time. So from their, I guess on that behalf, I'll kind of speak for him because we had this conversation more than once and more than a couple times. And that's why we decided that, you know, it'd be best to try to at least, I mean, this is a recommendation. I mean, the city doesn't have to do this at all. But it would, you know, we've kicked it around at staff level, talked about it with Dave, and it's kind of like, well, it would kind of be a shame to see this money be lost if the opportunity was to get another art piece in Dublin. We just didn't want to do two at once. He didn't want to do two at once. That's why we were recommending putting it in the cycle of the next AIPP, and that's how we landed at that as our recommendation.
Well, my short comments are that this is unusual. It is brought forward by a neighborhood, which are our residents. The process is extremely important. I think we've been very careful about making sure that the public process is followed. Yes, Dana.
Yeah, I would like to take the opportunity to add something. You know, this state capital fund process, there's a pretty disciplined process with this. And when cities put in, anybody can put in for it. So I'm not going to suggest that anyone can't. But I do think if others are interested in the city being a partner in this, it would only be nice to include the city in the process. Appreciate that people are getting money for Dublin. That's a wonderful thing. I don't certainly begrudge that in any way, shape, or form. The city has to go through a very rigorous process of advancing its projects through a regional committee. It gets vetted, and then those are then the legislative delegation is lined up behind it, and then and MORPC and others are kind of responsible for mustering that effort. And when things come around outside of that process, it makes it difficult, especially when it's a bit of a surprise. And I know that, I guess what I'm saying is it is a tough precedent. The city could just say, you know what, it wasn't a part of that process. The city doesn't have responsibility. Could do that. And that is an option. I think it's in the best interest of the city to take this on and do this in partnership with DAC and see where this lands. But, I hope that anyone who does this sort of thing in the future would look at us as a partner and trying to work together in doing that. So for what that's worth.
Well, that's good advice. I was just going to say that, obviously it's a little bit unusual, but the money is quite a large amount. And I think we've been very particular in asking staff to make sure that the process for art in public places is followed as closely as possible. As you noticed on the diagram, that there's not that much artwork in the northern end. So I personally like the idea of being able to be a partner in this as long as the process is followed, that everybody gets input. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as you mentioned, Robert, council always picks the location.
That's correct. That's identified in the Art and Public Places Master Plan.
That is part of the defined process.
That's correct.
All right. Kathy?
Robert, I just wanted to be sure that, you've said that, there'd be set of requirements for the city. certainly a set of requirements for the Milford Association, donation line. All of this will become a formal document,
Yes, we can put together a document memorializing these terms.
and the requirement of the process that it will follow without
Yes,
exception the process.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If there is no further discussion? Is there any further discussion? No. All right, I'll make a motion to direct staff to move forward with the project as outlined with the conditions that are stated. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Jenny, please call the roll.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa,
Yes.
Mayor Fox,
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms.
Yes.
Mr. Keeler.
Yes.
All right, our staff report. Oh.
Start that.
Dana's last staff report. Yes, we've got to get John and Christina back in here.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to take a few minutes here. First, I want to congratulate our own Jennifer Radler, who got named Municipal Attorney of the Year in Ohio. I'm a little bit disappointed because I'm a little bit disappointed because I think she's the best municipal attorney in the world, but that's another story. But congratulations, Jennifer. Really proud of you. I also want to thank City Council for your support of the International City County Manager Association Conference that was held here in Columbus, Franklin County, down at the Convention Center this last week. I believe the number I heard was close to 3,800 city and county managers from around the country, and it was international as well. Because of Dublin's sponsorship that y'all put in the budget last year, we were really front and center. Our logo was up there at all the major sessions and throughout the convention center in various areas. I want to thank Megan and others who helped put on a mobile workshop in Dublin regarding the whole development down around the river. And I had a lot of people come up to me and tell me just how wonderful it was. I personally had the chance to host and tour. The vice mayor and city manager and about 8 other members from Reno, Nevada, reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you take us up there, give us a tour?" I said, "Sure, come on up." So we brought them up and gave them a tour, which was they were just really blown away by it and how it came about and everything. So made quite an impression. Dublin made quite an impression. We also hosted the opening ceremony, and Homer Rogers and I co-chaired the opening event at the National Veterans Museum and Memorial downtown, and that was their big opening event. And I want to thank Councilmember Cram for coming by. It was a really nice event. It was a salute to service. Gave the ICMA a chance to lift up its veterans, which they're trying to recruit into the profession, and also to celebrate that opening. And it was a big success. So I really want to thank all of our staff and volunteers who helped out with that. And, the other thing too is Christine Nardecchia, we had to staff a lot of, volunteers at hotels and the airport. And it wasn't just Dublin, but all of the municipalities around. So everybody contributed to that. And Christine Nardecchia put out an all call to our own volunteers, and a lot of them showed up and helped. And I had a couple of people say, "Hey, somebody from Dublin was volunteering over at this hotel." So it was just pretty cool. So it was great effort. Thanks to Mayor Ginther and City of Columbus, Ken Wilson, the administrator of Franklin County, for all of that. And it just really shone a great light on the region. So with that, since this is my last meeting as your city manager, I want to take a few more minutes just to say a few words. And there's no way to cover all that I need to or should regarding my 34 years of service with the city. So I hope you'll indulge me for a few. I had to sit here for 34 years. So y'all are going to sit here and listen to me. So I simply and foremost just want to say thank you for the opportunity to serve the residents of Dublin for these more than 34 years. It's been a privilege and an honor to serve our residents, and I thank them most for most of all for this opportunity. I want to thank our many partners, to include state and county agencies, our neighboring jurisdictions, and other communities throughout the region and the state who have allowed us to learn from and partner with them. Our Chamber of Commerce and Business community, our many local agencies, such as Visit Dublin, Dublin Arts Council, Dublin Food Pantry, Centero, Dublin Bridges, other service organizations, our faith communities, and the development and real estate communities who find Dublin a great place to invest and grow. Thanks to all the schools, colleges, and universities who serve our community. I greatly admire those who serve by teaching and caring for our children and developing our workforce. And thanks for all the superintendents I had the chance to work with and their boards who have and continue to lead and make these schools among the best in the country. These are all true partners and the reason why Dublin is certainly a global city of choice. I want to recognize our thousands of volunteers who give tirelessly to this community, our consultants who round out our ability to make well-informed decisions, and our contractors who are an extension of ourselves executing a broad range of high-quality services. Thanks to all our amazing employees, past and present. They have been and continue to be second to none, and you'll find no more dedicated, selfless professionals with emphasis on professionals anywhere. They're all in all the time in their service to this community and beyond, and I thank their families for their untiring support and sacrifice. I want to thank our many former department and division heads who gave me a chance and mentored me, like Dave Harding and Danny Johnson, Chief Saran Farrell, Rob Geis, Heights von Eckertsberg, also Terry Fogler, Marcia Grigsby, Fred Hahn, who I just got to have lunch with the other day, Rick Helwig, Frank Cherokee, Ann Clark, Angel Muma, Sandra Piskarczyk, and so many others. My assistant of 23 years, Tammy Brown, who probably taught me as much as anybody, but she also kept me out of trouble probably more than anybody ever did. So I thank her. Special thanks to our entire leadership team, and especially those I work with most closely, like our former Assistant City Manager, Michelle Crandall, doing great things in Hilliard these days. Thanks to our Deputy City Managers, Megan and Robert, our current Assistant City Manager, Homer, Chief of Police, Justin Pice, Communications Public Information Director, Lindsay Weisenauer, Law Director, Jennifer Radler, Finance Director, Matt Stifler, Clerk of Council, Jenny Delgado, my management analysts that I've had, Nick Plow, Kirby Dirth, and my assistants, formerly Crazy Candy Jones, who we all love dearly, and now Deidre Wolf. And I want to thank my wife, Lisa, and our daughters, Caitlin and Colleen, and our family and friends for their unwavering support. So we know how blessed we've been to have lived here all these years. It's not typical in this profession. And Lisa and I balanced 3 careers thanks to that stability. So I'm proud of Lisa for her great career in public service, untiring volunteerism, which is more than I could even start to talk about, her service to our state, our region, the community. Our daughters, who said they would never follow career in public service, both are certainly serving others. Caitlin's an attorney with legal aid in Athens and working hard down there. And soon, Dr. Colleen McDaniel, with her doctoral work, is taking on sexual violence and abuse of adults, adolescents, and children. They're going to save the world. Okay, I'll get it together here. Thanks to our former village and city managers, and while I didn't have the opportunity to work for Sherm Sheldon, I admired the great work that he did in building a strong foundation and setting a tone for what Dublin could become. Tim Hansley for giving me a start in local government. And I didn't start here as an intern. That's kind of been the rumor and the legend. I started working for him in Lebanon, Ohio in 1986. He hired me here in 88. He claims all that there is to claim in my proposing to my wife, because we were interns together. So he takes all the credit for that. But I was Tim's management assistant, and he made me the city's first assistant service director, director of service, deputy city manager, directors, and deputy city manager, director of service. And Tim did a great, as you all know, did a great deal for this city, especially when it first became a city, which, by the way, was 35 years ago this year. He truly put Dublin on an amazing trajectory. Thanks to Jane Brodigan, by the way, I got to see her at the ICMA conference. She went on to become the city manager of Boulder, Colorado, and just recently served as president of our national association. She gave me a chance to be deputy city manager, director of economic development, which was a big leap of faith on her part because I'd never done economic development before. But thanks to her and the partnership with Colleen Gilger, I think we figured that out. Thanks to Terry Fogler, who expanded my role to deputy city manager, director of development. I learned a lot from Terry years before when he was a development director and continued to while he was city manager. and the work he did later on special projects like the Bridge Street District and Bridge Park. He's an amazing visionary. And if you look at a lot of the pivotal things that happened in Dublin, you'll find Terry behind it. Marcia Grigsby was our steadfast finance director for 25 years and then city manager. She's a lot of the reason we have and continue to have such a strong fiscal position. She set up much of what continues to have payoff still today, and Angel and Matt continue to carry on that tradition. Marcia always stepped in and quietly led us during times of change. She was always a steady hand and a cool head, and I was lucky to serve with her. And I learned a lot. I really stood on the shoulders of these people. I'm such a crier. Thanks to our federal and state legislative delegations and their staffs. You know, I've witnessed firsthand and can attest to the tremendous service they do for us. And I thank them always for being willing to listen, partner, and represent our local interests. And last, thanks to our city councils, past and present. I've served and supported many council members over 34 years. And I can tell you that every one of you has served with amazing passion and tireless dedication on behalf of all of our residents and businesses. And thanks for supporting our staff. You guys put in an enormous amount of time and effort and sacrifice. And you bring some wisdom to the table, as we've certainly seen here tonight. Your role to provide our strategic direction, policy, and necessary resources to succeed. You're compassionate and understanding, and you hold us to a high standard. I know six of the seven of you, because Reiner's been here forever. I realize the 6 to 7 of you are new during my tenure, and I hope that I've been helpful to all of you during our time together. I hope I've earned your trust and confidence. Thanks for your support of the employer's support of the Guard and Reserves. The city was amazing during my deployment to Iraq, and we're here for my family. Thank you for that. And thanks for your support of veterans, for including everyone in our democracy, as evident by your formation of the CIAC, the Chiefs Advisory Committee. And thanks for making that a priority. And thanks for challenging me along the way and also supporting me. And I've enjoyed working with you all, and I thank you too for your service. Now you know I only want a reception and not speeches. So in closing, my hope is simply that when you say the Pledge of Allegiance before each meeting, council members and staff are reminded that together with our citizens and businesses, you continuously work toward being a model democracy and strive to keep Dublin, Ohio as that city on the hill. God bless you in our great city. Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you. All right, sit down. Let's get on with it. Let's get this meeting over with.
I don't know who's
I
crying
can
more,
say that
him or
now that I'm
me.
heading out the door.
You know, yeah.
Hoorah.
Yeah, well, we'll save our comments, but you know, Dana, the thing, listening to you and all the people that you gave such great credit to, you know, it takes a lot of people to build a city, but it takes a really great leader with a passion like you have to make it come to reality, to carry that message 34 years and making Dublin this city so wonderful. You were always all in all the time. And you made all of us better. And it's been a privilege. And I'll just say this on my behalf, and I'm sure our council members feel this way. To have you at the dais with us by our side, advising and helping us be the best that we can be is an invaluable service to this city. And I know that we all thank you for that, and we're going to miss the heck out of you. So don't be a stranger. And thank you for that beautiful commentary that you gave, because you're a very special man. So we appreciate it. And I'm sure you'll be hearing some comments at Roundtable. We'll move on to our council reports. Finance Committee. Councilmember Aludo.
Did you want to do nothing? Okay. Thanks. So we, at our last meeting, we talked about the recreation cost recovery policy, and the long and short of it is basically because of sort of the ongoing effects from the pandemic, we opted to defer policy compliance for another year and then review it again. So that'll be coming back next year. We did review the cost study for all proposed fee change. Wow, this is really boring compared to what we just heard. Like, seriously, that was not fair. The cost study for proposed fee changes, there will be some an ordinance amending Chapter 35 coming back to council for consideration. And finally, the investment policy, we had an overview of that and a nice robust discussion. Staff will bring the ordinance back to council in January of next year.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Our council liaison reports. Did you have anything for board? We don't have anything for Board of Education.
Nothing.
US 33 corridor. Logan Union County. Champaign County, Dublin Arts Council.
Just going to say the Wildflowers are coming. It's going to be our last concert. It's going to be October the 9th. And Masayuka is coming back, one of our favorite artists from Japan, with the really cool patterns. Matter of fact, the show is called Pattern Forms. He'll be back from November the 8th to the 15th. Part of our civilization almost, this guy is. He's awesome. You got to collect his art. It's absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Veterans Committee, anything there, Mr. Reiner? Oh, Veterans Committee, I'm sorry, I didn't catch you off guard there.
Hey, our biggest and best veteran is getting out of here. That's the veterans report right there. Thank you, General.
Washington Township, Councilman Cram. Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, Chris. All right. Planning and Zoning Commission. All right. Council Roundtable.
Oh, now you're going to start with me. Right, thanks. I am not going to belabor this, Dana, because I could say all the things in all the ways, and it still wouldn't quite do justice. Except you talked about being, on the shoulders of giants. Guess what? Now you're one of those giants.
Gosh, it's been a long time. I feel like as if I've always known you, but in my time as mayor, we did a lot of really hard stuff together. And, people will frequently ask about that time. And I'll say it was really hard. People were really upset. And we were taking a lot of body blows, but I was glad to take them with you. So appreciate that and look forward to your continued friendship.
I'm sorry, I'm going to miss your celebration next week. I will be out of town, but we'll get together.
I will be with you.
But thank you for all. I wish I had more than 1 year on council with you. I'm glad you're retiring.
You're a general. You've been the CEO. What has always, I guess, inspired me about you is I know you have fire in the belly, but you have this uncanny ability to harness it and always conduct yourself with class, composure. And to answer your question, for at least me, and I'm sure the other newbies, you have been a great role model. And I just hope that the future, you get back so much of what you sacrificed for the city and the country. I've never seen a general cry. You're a little crybaby.
Should have been
But
at my
you're also-
retirement ceremony there too. I'm a crier.
But you're also the man in the arena. That stuck with me. It's a very difficult job. 24 hours, all in, all the time. But you've represented us very well. And it's been a privilege to work with you and learn so much from you.
Dana, I don't know, you're, it's just words hard to describe you. I can think back when you were head of public services, and all of a sudden we got all these rave reviews about the snow was being removed on time and everything was wonderful. And you had to say to yourself, well, who's running that? And it was you. And then you moved up to development director, city manager, and everything you did with Prussian perfection and excellence. I mean, it was just amazing. So it's been a pleasure to be working with you, and I wish you all the best in the future. And just thank you from all the citizens in Dublin, because you helped make this and keep this place a great community. So God bless you.
Dana, when I was thinking about how I could sum up just really all of the talents that you had, it made me think I'm a huge fan of Malcolm Gladwell. Dana and I review books, me going to his office, and I think you're probably up a few on me, but I like to read as well. And his work, if you don't know, it is really about leadership and what makes people special and unique. And he said there's lots of traits, but there's one thing that if you can find somebody who's willing to commit to 10,000 hours of their life to something that they care about, they're going to be a master. So I did a little math, and you didn't commit 10,000 hours. You committed 10,000 days to this work. And that's what you did. You committed every day and every passion. It just all in is not a motto. It's just who you are as a person. And so I'm sure if Malcolm Gladwell got to study you, he'd say, oh my goodness, I got to change that bar. I did some calculation, 1,800 days with you or something like that over my brief time. But the wisdom that you've shared with me, as you said, and the rest of the council, I'll carry that for the next 10,000 days for sure. And I cannot thank you enough for that. But I think what I want to thank you most for is for your friendship. And I think everybody in this room, not only do they look to you as for mentor and help, but they know every day you're their friend. So thank you for that. And thank you, Lisa, I see you in the back there, for sharing him with us for 10,000 days, most of those days anyway, okay? And I wish you guys beautiful next chapter together. Thank you, Dana.
Well, I cheated and had mine to soften the transition, but I'm the kind of person that you always knew loved the table talk. And you were so wonderful when I first came on as a council member to sit across the table and teach me. And I was stubborn. And sometimes we butted heads. But I learned so much from you when it came to understanding this process and the importance of the position and how to help be a part of building a city. That doesn't come easy for a citizen. It's kind of, you're out of the water that you're familiar with. You were always there to help us grow. And that was invaluable time. I've grown exponentially by your advice. My hope for you is that you'll take as many of those 10,000 days to enjoy 10,000 more days of relaxation and new adventures. And I know you won't stop. There'll be other people that you'll teach, and there'll be family members that you'll watch grow. And just know that something about the authenticity that you bring to the table is so unique. You have a realness about you. You care so passionately, and you don't find many people like that. And I know I'm personally blessed that we have become friends. We'll always be neighbors, I hope. And I just want to thank you for all that you've offered this city and myself. And just know you and Lisa are such special parts of this community that we're so blessed to have you in it and all the things that you've given. So We're going to miss you sitting at the dais. And before the rest of us do any more crying, we're going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you all and have a good evening.